Daily injections suck. They suck. They suck. No, they don't suck. Some people actually make them work quite well. But listen, I want to make one thing clear. Like I get comment. Like I had just gotten a comment on a video that I did some time ago about adding VAR to TRT when you really can't control estrogen with high doses. You're having problems. Some stuff's not right down there. You go down to 110, 120. You lose some animalism, but at least the sexual function comes back. And then you add some VAR to make up for the animalism. You do short cycles of 3 months of 10 milligrams a day, or 2 months of 10 milligrams a day. You cycle off, you watch your lipids, all that stuff. You get your cake and eat it too in that case. Some of the comments there, I wish I could find the comment and kind of screenshot it or something, said something to the effect of, all you have to do to manage estrogen is smooth out the peaks by doing daily dosing. And this is where that logic is entirely too simple. You want to understand every facet of the pharmacokinetic profile of your ester, of what your body prefers in terms of peaks of testosterone, peaks of dopamine, therefore peaks in androgen receptor binding, peaks in DHT, versus if it can perform fine without having peaks, with just having stable levels. Now, going back to our natty states, we fluctuate our testosterone levels. We peak pretty significantly in the morning, and then we essentially stay relatively physiologic, then we start troughing. And sometimes that change is a 400 to 500 nanogram per deciliter change throughout the course of a day. Now, that's on the extreme side, but people swing a few hundred nanograms per deciliter pretty regularly. So we're not at steady state at all when we're natural. Now, bringing this all together, if you're going to give TRT advice, like I'm giving TRT advice, you should never say that this particular strategy will apply to everyone, which is why I'm very careful to not do that. Because some people do fine on daily injections and other people need twice weekly injections of a larger amount to get the dopamine synthesis, the AR binding, the DHT, to get a little bit of a trough of estradiol. They're just not steady state. They're kind of just going like this. And for those people, their libido works. That's why I never say this thing applies to everybody. Why I've got different topics on content that, seem to be different or maybe even contradictory, because I'm not speaking to everyone when I say this. Say one strategy will work. I'm very clearly saying, if this is you, then do this. There's always if-then logic in every single one of my statements about TRT. Now, the reason that I have found as a coach that likes to look at things more on a systems level and encompass every degree of nuance, like the pharmacokinetics, like what people may need, like a person's androgen receptors being a little more sensitive than others, and therefore they can tolerate higher estrogen because they have a more pronounced androgen effect. These nuances need to be factored into giving recommendations to people on TRT. So back to the comment which said, all you have to do to smooth out estrogen is do daily injections. I want to make one thing clear. I have, in experimentation with people, especially early on when daily injections were a lot more popular, and I had already intuitively known that they didn't work for everybody, but really wanted to test rigorously the logic. I had taken people from 120 doing daily injections with like virtually no libido or erectile quality, up to 140 daily injections, no real change in libido or erectile quality. You get up to 160, 170, there's a little bit better libido because the estrogen is higher and the androgens are higher, but erectile quality still suffering. Up to 190, 200 daily injections, erectile quality still suffering. Up to 210 daily injections, erectile quality still suffering. Up to 250. Okay, so you might think, if these people would do better on bolus doses, then simply they need more androgens. Except for if you just scale the androgens up, well, you're scaling the estrogen up as well. Still, they don't get the same bolus injections. Like say you bring them to 210. It's 30 milligrams a day, right? That is a minuscule amount of testosterone at once for someone that is going to require a 70 to 100 milligram to 150 milligram injection at once in order to feel TRT. There's a point at which scaling up daily dosing, because you think, oh, they just need more testosterone, executes a diminishing returns. What are you going to do? You're going to go to 250. What are they at then? 40 milligrams a day or something? 35 milligrams a day? It's 50 milligrams? It's 50 milligrams a day. Then they're loaded with acne. Then their blood pressure's high. They never trough at all. If the balance between test and estradiol at 140 daily injections is not good, what makes you think that the balance will somehow magically improve when they're at 210? It doesn't. That TDE ratio, DHT to estrogen ratio is largely going to be the same, just scaled upwards, and it will not make sense. So let me go back to the experiment. In said people where we tried to scale the dose up to confirm or deny if daily dosing works for them, it ultimately never did. We would get up to 210, 250 a week, 50 milligram daily injections. And then it was very clear to me, okay, these people are not doing well. The pharmacokinetic profile of cypionate in that case does not serve them well when they do it daily. So instead of those super high doses daily, I would reduce them down to like 170, 150 or so, and just do a 75 milligram injection either every 3.5 days or every fourth day. Then suddenly, these guys that were on 210, 250 with high androgens, which you would think, oh, they just need high androgens, when the high androgens did nothing for them. I mean, literally, they're anabolic and energized, but the sexual system's just completely fucking dead, and libido is completely lukewarm. Lowering the dose or keeping it at a moderately high TRT dose of 150, but 75 split up, then they got 75 milligrams with the pharmacokinetic profile of testosterone cypionate at once, and then they had libido again. Okay? Say it was 200. 100 milligrams at once, then they had libido again. Then, to further refine that, making the injection frequency a little less, not 3.5 days or not 3 days, but every 5 days, every 6 days, every 7 days with bolus amounts, would solve the sexual dysfunction problem for people entirely. And I ran the experiments scientifically. Okay, if you want to do daily injections, these are people's preference. They heard it on the web. Someone on the web said to them, daily injections are for everyone. This is the mistake that people make listening to that, especially as TRT YouTubers. We can't be making blanket statements. You have to be responsible with what you're saying. Even if people are just so interested in sounding like what they're saying makes sense, and making it not convoluted because it's going to confuse people. Well, if the convolution fucking fixes people's protocols, you want to be giving them that. Daily injections of testosterone can work for some individuals where they respond favorably to that hormone profile, which usually has to do with more sensitive ARs, in my opinion, a better, stronger conversion to DHT versus estrogen, in my opinion, and the fact that their physiology isn't hardwired to require boluses at once. They don't need that, right? I don't really know the reasons why some people require boluses. Probably they just could use the extra dopamine synthesis and the heavy DHT conversion once, you start converting your testosterone. But the daily injections for some people, no matter how you scale that up, for some individuals, it's never going to work. It's never going to work. It's never going to work. And I have proven that. That's why I don't give blanket statements like daily injections work best for everybody or bolus injections work best for everybody. So people just have to remember that. Going back to this comment of a guy that's saying you can smooth out the estrogen when you have a problem of being unable to manage it on TRT by just doing daily injections. Yeah, but you also then run the risk of this percentage of people, which I've proven, and I think a lot of other people have proven. Go to reddit.com/r/testosterone and type in the word in the search box, less frequent. And you'll find this phenomenon of people that have done exactly what I just said. Tried to scale the dose up. They've tried every protocol under the sun of daily injections, and they just don't have sexual function. Their libido is not there. Then they go to infrequent injections, and the problem is resolved. So, guy in the comments on my Anavar video that said all you have to do to smooth out estrogen is do daily injections. I want to make this clear. This is the most dumbed down explanation. Like it is the simplest strategy, which factors in nuance to such a nil extent that it's almost like it's like TRT amateur talk to suggest daily dosing will just smooth out the estrogen. There's so much more involved than that. And I truly want people to understand that. You're going to need to figure out what works for you. Some people will do daily dosing forever, scale it up forever, thinking it's just higher androgens that they need. Suddenly they inject 150 at once intramuscularly. They're getting it right in the vascular tissue. It's a pretty fast uptake, lots of conversion. Holy shit. My libido is like it was when I was 17 again. Never in the previous 3 years on TRT doing daily injections did I ever have libido like this. Shouldn't that be enough proof for people? It kind of makes me think the people that are out there suggesting it as TRT coaches and stuff just aren't seeing enough people. Or they're stuck on their dogma so much that if people don't respond to the daily injections in terms of libido, they think it's something else. Oh, maybe it's a genetic problem. It's horseshit, dude. They need boluses. So please keep that in mind. Daily's not going to work for everybody. It can for some, but you can't apply. You can't think that some logically sounding TRT strategy is just going to be applicable to everyone. It is a huge mistake. This is the big beef that I've had with the TRT hormone channel. They make very blanket statements and extreme statements. And some of their guys are up there saying, yeah, let your hematocrit go to 54. Fucking stupid. Literally fucking stupid. All right, let's get to questions if we can. All right, boys. Doing daily 25 milligrams of prop, 200 IU HCG every day, 5 to 10 milligrams Cialis. Tried adding 60 milligrams bolus of test enethate. Felt improvement. PFS suffer. Okay, so prop is a case in which daily injections make sense. If you really want to get the bolus effect from prop, you should be doing every other day injection. So maybe 50 milligrams every other day, or like 60 to 70 to 80 every third day. Prop isn't immediately out of your system. It just peaks very quickly. On that third day, you'll still have some, and you might end up finding your sweet spot there. But what this comment essentially suggests is that on a daily lukewarm protocol, even if it's a fluctuative protocol like prop, once you plot that out, though, on steroid plotter, you're pretty even, actually, on 25 milligrams a day. Because the very next day you're injecting again. You get to a steady state. It's the same concept that I'm trying to explain here. Guy didn't really have much improvement. Added a bolus of 60 milligrams of enethate, gets improvement. It's exactly what I'm saying. Like, just some people are going to require a larger amount of androgens at once. What do I think this is? I think that it is heavier AR binding for longer with DHT that disassociates from the receptor at a less duration than testosterone itself. I think it's pronounced gene expression of the AR, and I think it's more optimized dopamine conversion from tyrosine into dopa, and then from dopa through dopa decarboxylase into dopamine. That is what I think it is. Also think that there's probably some unknown neurologic mechanisms by which boluses drive libido in the realm of some sort of sexual function enhancement of the limbic system. I do not know why other TRT practitioners are not discussing this. But, case in point, what TRT factors cause delayed ejaculation or inability to climax? Usually lower end estrogen relative to androgens, not enough HCG for your protocol. Those are the things that typically drive that. Like if you take an AI and you take the estrogen down to like 25 and it's just a little bit, or 20, call it, and really your sweet spot's about 30 for libido, 35, then your climax will be harder because you cannot mentally maintain interest and libido during the act of sex. That happens. That happens a lot. That's usually the biggest cause. You can take loads of DHT, block estrogen at the gene expression and receptor level, and have the same problem. You'll have great erections, but the sensation drops because you can't mentally maintain libido, because estrogen really needs to be in your libido-friendly state. There's an erection quality state with estrogen and a libido-friendly state with estrogen, and you need to find it where it's good for both. That's the first reason. The other potential reason is just high estrogen. I mean, this can cause this too. I think the mechanism for this is, listen, what people have to understand, talk about nuances, that what estrogen does at the dopamine level, people think like it improves it or something. Well, first of all, it increases the expression of serotonergic function in the brain, which is completely counter to dopamine. So immediately you have a lever that is kind of inhibiting your dopamine firing to an extent. This is one of the primary reasons that people will take serotonergic drugs and initially have a loss of libido. So that's one thing. Secondarily, regarding estrogen desensitizes the dopamine D2 receptors response to dopamine, right? This is precisely the mechanism by which it is prolactogenic. Because dopamine, if those D2 receptors are nice and sensitive, dopamine binds, agonizes to those D2 receptors. You then get an inhibition of the lactotrope cells on the pituitary. Whereas high estrogen causes a lack of sensitivity of those D2 receptors, and then you get increased prolactin. So that is the other potential mechanism for this. So it could go both ways. High estrogen can cause this, and too low estrogen relative to your androgens can cause this. Go get the lab so that you have data now. You have your symptoms, but now you have data. Go get the labs and see what you think. Next time you want to ask like a big long question with this, put it all in one and super chat it. Audacity. What's the lowest weekly test sip dose you've actually seen work with a single IM bolus? 80 milligrams a week. Yeah, this was an older gentleman. Robert, if you're out there, I hope you're doing well. This was an older gentleman that came to me, and the previous, we wanted to change it up, and he wanted to do something different because the anabolism wasn't really there. But 80 milligrams at once a week worked for sexual function. It was pretty great. And someone can make that work and just add a little anavar for the anabolism and end up in a relatively okay place. But we ended up having to control estrogen a little bit and then doing infrequent injections, basically every 3.5 days of larger amounts. Seriously. 10 milligrams test prop daily, one-click test cream, 100 milligrams. On the scrotum, 100 IU HEG. E2 is at 72.5. Any suggestions on getting this to the sweet spot? So, well, first of all, do you have problems? When did you measure this estrogen? What is sexual function like? I would at least like to know that. Your estrogen is 72 at peak. Yeah, I mean, it looks to me as if you're probably a hyper responder to test prop. Yep, because one click of test cream would not, on the scrotum at 100 milligram per milliliter, would certainly not bring the E2 up meaningfully at all. You're probably an over responder to test prop. So, I mean, in this case, I don't know. You should test the total testosterone. Then that would give you your answer. If your test is 1500, there's your answer. You're an over responder to prop. You're aromatizing pretty normally at 72.5 at 1500 total test. So you might have to, it becomes a little cumbersome because then you might need to go to like, 6 milligrams a day of prop. And then same thing with cream. It is entirely possible also that 100 IU of HCG every day is making you aromatize too much. So you have those routes to take. And if none of that works, you're probably better off doing bolus injections of long ester infrequently with very little HCG, as much as you can maintain testicular function without going over an E2. And for some people, that's like 60 IU a day. John Cece, is this the peak trough effect? Friends on daily test, but uses 2x 500 IU HCG bolus shots weekly and feels better versus daily HCG, basically using HCG spikes instead of tests for hormonal variation. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, he is. Yeah, again, there are just some individuals, whether it's the HCG or the test, typically it's better being the test, that require variations in hormone profile where you can keep them, you can put them at any level, 600, 700, 800, 900, 1105, 1300. With daily injections, they never have libido. Whereas you have them at 800 at peak, like 560 at trough, but they're doing infrequent injections, they have libido. Or you bring them up to 1600 at peak and then 800 at trough, they have libido. It is because the dopamine synthesis, the AR binding, the DHT that's sitting at the receptor for longer. Do you know, because DHT disassociates at a far less rate in terms of duration at the androgen receptors, do you know that more DHT sitting for longer continues the androgen receptor mediated gene expression? This is another thing that, like, the folks that are out there talking about daily injections, I honestly think that there are some TRT people giving advice about TRT and stuff, like these daily people, that their understanding of TRT is just extremely amateur. Their brain doesn't work in a way which really looks at all these super details. Some people need spikes, man. Is softer morning wood more of a sign of low DHT or high estrogen? It can be both. Yeah, but it's typically a sign of high estrogen relative to your androgen profile. That's what it's typically a sign of. Would you say that 100 IU daily is decent fertility support with low dose prop? It will take you, if we base this on the scientific literature on HCG and fertility, really intratesticular testosterone amounts, 100 IU a day is going to have you right around 87% testicular function, 87% ITT. So therefore, I would say you have a pretty good shot at being pretty fertile on that. Yeah. JL Montaigne can't do AIs. Tried microdosing. Lower doses suck for anabolism, as I've mentioned. Yeah. So I'll try running some Anavar cycles. Do you think adding HGH? CJC apomorelin, you run a prolactogenic risk of increasing prolactin. So I would do that cautiously. You can run prolactin and see where it takes it. Regarding can't do AIs, yeah, this is common enough where even if you dose, if you do liquid X, you take your Arimidex, you chop it up, you put it in some vodka, a dropper vial, and you're dropping it, on the tongue, and you're getting 0.0, fucking 0.1 milligrams every other day or something. It still is blocking estrogen at the tissue level in some pronounced way because AIs are strong, and it sucks for everything. Yes, lower doses do suck for anabolism, absolutely. The Anavar thing might help. 100 milligrams test a week, do every other day injections or daily injections in that point. In that case, it's like, who knows? You get the estrogen down. That's where daily injections actually make sense, when your estrogen's already low enough to, no matter what your androgen level is, if it's 500, if estrogen's 20, you're going to have sexual function. Or you might be one of those people that surprisingly can actually tolerate higher estrogen, but you're going to need boluses of androgens at once, 100 at once, 150 at once, something like that. And if you can get away with 150 every 7 days, that's a great protocol. If you feel good throughout, it all depends on how your body responds to cypionate. Hey, Ryan, what are your thoughts on low SHBG? Naturally low, 11 to 15 is not a problem. Yeah. Elevated CRP is unrelated likely to your SHBG. So you want to figure out how to get that down, definitely. TRT does affect SHBG and typically will lower it a bit from your baseline, but I don't really see it ever actually manifesting as a problem when SHBG is 8 to 11. I mean, mine sits kind of around there. Do I still use nootropics? Occasionally I'll take Our Stack, the Torque Stack. I haven't taken modafinil in like 3-4 months. There's just this one day where I was working on a product launch for Cortex Labs that I took modafinil and just completed it, completed the product, completed the launch all in one day. It took like 9 hours. But otherwise, I just don't need it. I just don't need it. I'm pretty dialed in with TRT, and I feel like, in terms of energy, I feel awesome pretty much all day. I'd start troughing at night. I'm on cream still, and I feel really good now. Like, would I feel better on testosterone cypionate? Yes, I'd feel better on cypionate, like a stable protocol, which for me still allowed variations, and a controlled controlled estrogen profile, because it's just more steady androgen receptor activation, which on the energy front seems, it ends up being better than a fast-acting ester that kind of goes like that. My next move is I've been sitting down at moderate doses of cream with a little bit of HCG for, I spent about 6 months or something. So I'm just not terribly anabolic. I'm kind of hovering around where I am. So yeah, I would either run a cycle, run some Anavar, or move to cypionate for probably about 6 months, build some more muscle more sustainably, and then probably go back to cream or something. But I feel great right now, and I don't use many nootropics. How would you dial and test prop and HGD if you had it today, knowing what you know now? 25 mil. Well, for me, it's 25 milligrams of prop a day and 100 IU of HGG a day. And so sexual function stellar, but the only problem with that protocol is that I'm really not anabolic. So I've tried running 80 every third day. I've tried 100 every third day on prop. And those were good and better for anabolism, but harder to keep the sexual function consistent. So it'd be good on days 1 and 2, and then not so good on day 3. Estrogen would certainly go a little over range for me, and it would be mucking things up. And the hormone profile, the ratios were hard to get to my ratio. Would have to be dosing a little bit of aromasin in that case. So those are the things that I would do. I mean, for me, 25 a day with 100 IU HCG solves the erection libido dynamic on TRT with prop. Above that, I would need to control estrogen. Creatine is amazing. Shoulders looking big, brother. Yeah, I haven't been to the gym, oddly, in a week because I didn't tear. I strained the levator scapulae. It's a band of muscles right here. And that was pushing incline press to failure, which I usually do, but then trying to do another rep. And I'd done that twice in one day and then once like 3 days prior. And what I ended up doing in order to get that bar up for that, where I was ultimately at I was already at fucking muscle failure. In order to get the bar up, I had to recruit the levator scapulae to get it up. And that injured me. So I haven't been in the gym in like 7 days. This coming Monday will be like 9 days or something, and I'll try going back because the pain has largely gone away. I was having radiating headaches that would start from the levator scapulae and radiate to the back of my head, likely through the occipital nerve, and it was giving me fucking a lot of pain. But when I go back to the gym, and especially if I do go back on cypionate for some anabolism, more anabolism than cream gives me, then I'll have some growth. Is there a way to get lab results back quickly from LabCorp? No. Nope. You just got to wait for them. Typically, Quest is a little faster on E2 sensitive, though. It's 9 to 11 days. I've gotten it back as soon as 7. Hey, Ryan, do you still have the Cortex supplements for sale? No. Cortex is out. We just never re-upped on it. One of the reasons was, first of all, I've changed from discussing nootropics to discussing hormones, and I'd been, doing coaching for hormones for years prior to actually talking about it publicly. I didn't really know if there was a market for it, and I was still very interested in nootropics. At the same time, each time we re-up on product, I'm dropping $25,000 to $30,000 each time. So it got a little, and then you slowly get that back over time through sales. And it's a pretty high margin product. Nootropics are relatively high margin. And so it'd be a slow drip response, but it always hurt to drop 30 grand. I was always like, shit. I don't like looking at that. On prop, how do you know if you need an infusion of a long ester? It's probably not the best thing to dose prop and then need an infusion of a large ester. The way, because then it's just getting too complicated. You probably just should go to, once every 5th day, once every 4th day of a semi-bolus amount of cypionate, or if you can tolerate it and you feel energized throughout, once every 7 days, a sip of larger amounts of cypionate. But in this case, it'd be if you're doing daily injections and you feel very flat. Nothing. You're not going to magically end up in the right hormone ratio. You're just going to stay where you are. Even if you try to scale it up, you're going to scale a shitty hormone ratio up. So at that point, you might want to consider changing the ratio. But in this case, you have to look at your bloods as well, man, and see where they are so that you can get an idea of what your ratio is, if estrogen's overcrowding the androgen effect, so you can decide what to do. What thoughts on Sustanon? It's only that just helps sexual symptoms. Great. Well, that's just just because it's kind of going a little like this. I mean, I don't know how frequently you're injecting it, but you're getting some good variation with it's either prop or phenylpropionate that's insisted on, right? So that is why. That is why you're just somebody that requires that, man. Dude, I've seen people that have problems on, cypionate, NFA, and then they got the, it's like the 160, 40 milligram per milliliter cypionate prop blend, and they injected that semi-infrequently. It was ranging from every other day to every 3.5 days to once a week, and then they got their sexual function back. Am I using DHT SIP over enethate or over an AI to control your E? What's controlling my estrogen now is lots of DHT from cream. Yeah, I don't have to take an AI on cream. If I dosed higher, maybe, I mean, when I was dosing higher amounts of cream, the 200 milligram stuff, the estrogen would go above range and it would be a little problematic. My body loves 30 estradiol. It just loves it. Only at like 1,500 to 2,000 tests does it like 50 estradiol, but not necessarily sustainable to do that. Thank you, bro. Appreciate that, man. I'll take the Red Bull. I will take it, actually. All right, guys. Oh, that's the AI version. That wasn't so good. There it is. Okay. April intake TRT. So I booked 12 of these, and we're going to book 25. So there's 13 left. There's 13 slots left in coaching, and then we're taking it back to full price. And what's probably going to happen is coaching is just going to go away because I'll be overbooked. I mean, I booked 12 in almost 2 weeks. So my roster is already nearly half full. So once we get to 25 total bookings on this, coaching goes away for a little. You can book me for calls if you need to, but I won't be able to take any more clients for coaching. But right now I can, and it's half off. Everything is about 50% reduced. Massive price reduction on coaching. I'll leave that up there. This will be open until 6 to 8 slots are filled with everyone, or 25 total, and then it's going down. Why with 220 milligrams do I need like 50, 60 E2 to relieve symptoms? Can you be more specific about what's happening? What symptoms are you having? And then what does estrogen being at 50 to 60 relieve for you? If you're a very high DHT converter, your 40 estradiol is going to feel like 20 estradiol, just because DHT is very counter to estrogen in many ways. I've explained all those nuances before. So it could be the case that in order for you to feel like you have enough estrogen, because DHT is blocking it at the gene expression level and the receptor level, you need higher blood estrogen, right, to end up at a balance. This is precisely situations in which people can tolerate higher estrogen, right? They've got a higher androgen load to be able to deal with that. Again, this doesn't scale indefinitely, as I've made clear, so you can't just be at 5,000 total tests and 90 or 120 estrogen. It doesn't. You're just going to have ED at that point. But it scales up to a point for some individuals. Yeah. When E2 drops to 30, I feel very tired and less sexual. Yeah, so it's because you've got a fast-acting ester in there, so you're peaking high on androgens. You are, and you're probably a good DHT converter. So again, DHT counters estrogen in this regard. So this is why some people will need slightly higher estrogen. It's not that they actually at 55 have high estrogen. It's that at the tissue level, they have moderately fine estrogen there, despite what the blood is telling us, This explains this phenomenon I've seen in coaching where it's like if you're in the 100 to 130 milligram dose range of cypionate per week, especially if you're injecting frequently, your estrogen, you cannot tolerate high estrogen at all. Like it needs to be like 25, 27, 30. Whereas if you're injecting 175 to 250 a week, then that estrogen window becomes a little less narrow. Not a lot less narrow, but a little less narrow. So it's like you're not having to stay within a 7 to 10 picograms per milliliter range. You can stay within a 15 to 20 picograms per milliliter range in estrogen. This is just pretty common. Brother. It's pretty common, brother. Yeah, I really urge people to take heed to the discussion that's been going on this channel regarding bolus injections. That, You have not on TRT felt libido with doing daily injections or doing low doses or whatever, and you inject 150 at once, and suddenly you're like, holy fuck, I'm horny again. Like, what the hell? AR driven, dopamine driven. Some people need boluses. They just do. Thanks for the super chat. Seriously, I'm a hyper responder to small amounts of prop. Should I switch to cream instead of tinker with prop with microdoses? As I said, yeah, it would be easier to. If I were you want to rule everything out. So I would probably try the 5 to 6 milligrams of prop a day. You're going to get your answer by testing your total testosterone. So again, if it's like 1500 or something, then you're a true hyperresponder. Then you know for sure without guessing. You don't want to do guesswork and unless you're years experienced in TRT, where you pretty much know based on how you feel where your bloods are. Yeah, I can guess within a 10 picograms per milliliter range where estrogen is usually 5. Total test, it's a little harder to guess, but I'm pretty accurate on figuring that out. But if you're not like that, you should get the bloods. Does E2 fluctuation from different protocols mess up EQ if you aren't sitting in a good range for a good amount of time? Do estrogen fluctuations from different protocols mess up erection quality if you aren't sitting in a good range for a good amount of time? No, not necessarily. It depends on the androgen load that you have, and does that androgen load allow you to tolerate peaks in estradiol? When people are doing bolus injections infrequently, they get peaks in estrogen, right? But the androgens are just strong enough to allow them to tolerate that. If you're doing if you're one of those people that requires estrogen to be at 30 and to stay there without it fluctuating, then yeah, you're going to be better with it staying where, at a reasonably level place. And the only ways to do that are you have the right dose of an aromatase inhibitor with a high dose of test, or you're someone who can do daily injections and you keep it at 30. Your test is at like 900 and you're okay. Word, brother. Brother. I know. R.I.P. Hulk. Hulkster. Hulkster has left us. That dude had all manner of problems, leading up to it. Lots of injuries and just lots of shit. Nobody really knows what he was doing, what his diet was like or any of that stuff. Toward the end, he really looked bad. Yeah. He really looked bad, man. I saw some videos. Like, you saw him on Rogan. You saw him on, I think he went to one of Trump's rallies and looked like the Hulk, man. It was totally cool. But like toward the end, there's like some of his last videos on the internet. He looked sick. He looked like Skeletor a little bit, It's just fucked up, man. It's jacked up, brother. Any other questions, guys? If you got them, ask them. Otherwise, what is going on with my life? Had a relatively good week with the casinos. I think I made about $4,000 this week with the casinos, which is good. Otherwise, still waiting to go back to the gym. Injured my levator scapulae. These muscles here. You don't want to injure them. They connect to your brain, the occipital nerve specifically, and can give you terrible, terrible pain. Terrible pain. I had for the first week of that injury to run 600 milligrams of ibuprofen every day at 2 p.m. when it onsetted, between 2 and 5 p.m. really. And that sucks. I don't want to be taking that shit, but the pain was so substantial. I was an idiot. I reached failure on a pretty heavy incline press. I reached failure already and tried to push another rep. So I had to recruit all kind of muscles in my neck that are not, weren't worked enough, weren't strong enough to do that. And I fucking injured myself. I was an idiot. I'll never do that again. Brother. So I go back to the gym this coming Monday. It'll be a light workout and we'll see how it goes. I haven't been able to run either because running, when you're running in a city like I run in, you're having to turn your neck, red lights, you're constantly on a swivel. So it's just activating the levator scapulae, making shit worse, brother. How do you know if you should be daily or every other day prop? Well, if daily makes you feel flat, then you might need more of a peak and trough. and every other day would do that, or every third day or so. On 4 pumps of 100 mil cream, having estrogen issues, what should I do next? Test it, because I don't know what your estrogen issues are. I don't know what your symptoms are and if they are truly estrogen issues. You kind of don't know unless you test it. Would you use BPC? I don't have any, and I just thought to myself, you know what, this would be a good time for me to deload. Just deload. My body ends up, as long as I'm staying lean, my body ends up looking slightly better if I deload, oddly, and then I go back to the gym, and then it's like I'm giving it stimulus again, and things end up being okay. Regarding anabolism, I'm in a very lukewarm place with anabolism. I'm just at my peak, which I don't think I have here anywhere. I've got me and Jill on vacation. Yeah, that's all I have. I have, at my peak, I looked very, vascular and good. There's Jill again. I really don't think I have my, my peak image. Oh, pre-cycle, post-cycle. Yeah, that's my peak image right there. So that was at 500 milligrams a week, 560 of enanthate. I was doing every other day injections. Was it 160 every other day, 150 every other day? Just large amounts of testosterone enanthate. And when I'm very lean and with a pump, I look pretty comparable to that, but not that. So once this fucking injury is figured out, yeah, I might just go run some cypionate for like 6 months or so, dial that in on the sexual function side. I pretty much know what to do. Maybe push it a little for some extra anabolism. Strengthen my damn neck muscle so that I don't have to fucking use BPC. 100 milligrams HCG every day. Okay. Do you trust AI for answers to TRT protocols? No, I do not. But you should use ChatGPT specifically, and the thinking version that you pay for. You have to pay for that. You should use it to run logic through it, but you've also got to program it with your bloods. You've got to program it with your previous history, your nuances, and do you respond to boluses at once? If you've taken meticulous notes throughout the time you're on TRT, which everybody should if you're trying to dial in, you can upload those notes to chat and have chat discern things for you. You shouldn't just ask it a question without it knowing nothing about you. So the answer is yes and no. I don't trust it if it has no context and no understanding of your situation and no comprehension of some of the notes that you may have taken regarding your erectile and libido responses to certain doses, frequency, esters of TRT. But if you notated all that shit and you program it into chat, then you should trust it. Because it's then going to, because it's really great at logic, it's going to extract patterns. Okay, you seem to do better if you're stable for a little and then you infuse a lot more testosterone. You note on 317, libido increase from, extra bolus of 90 milligrams on top of my baseline of 15 milligrams a day. Those kinds of things. It will find patterns and give you clues into how to dial in further. Do you see any difference in using MCT, grapeseed, cottonseed? No, I do not. Switched gradually to daily injections, 85 milligrams a week. Since then, libido degraded to 0. Now, did you reduce your dose as well? Or did you just switch to daily injections? E2 of 62, then added AI. Okay. It could be one of two things, man. If you reduced your dose, you got less total androgen load. So, the libido is probably going to drop. To some extent, guys doing 200 a week, once a week injections, they have such high libido that it's a problem, and they want normal libido. So they'll just drop their dose down and they end up getting like a relatively normal libido. But if this isn't that, then it's the same thing. You switch to daily injections, you get no peaks at all. None. And if your physiology is requiring peaks in dopamine and androgen receptor binding to have sexual function, you'll never have sexual function with no peaks. That's just it. Dude, I rigorously even staying on board with trying daily injections because certain clients preferred how they felt on them. We tried. The moment they did boluses, libido erections come back. So, it just might be the case that daily injections are not for you. They work for me, I will say. Daily injections do work for me, so this should show people I'm not up here talking about my experience. I don't really give a shit. I'm an N=1. Daily injections can work for me so long as the ratio works. But I've tried that with other people, and it just doesn't. They need boluses. Now, I respond to boluses too, and frankly, the libido is better with boluses. Daily, I can dial into where my libido's fine. It's not bothering me all day, but when, I'm in bed with Jill or whatever, it's like it turns on. But with bolus injections of more testosterone at once, the libido is bothersome. It's like I'm trying to start my day for work and all I can think about is sex. All my numbers are right in the right range that you talk about. DHT is 10 times over the top. E2 is 35, dealing with iron issues, low ferritin. Well, if your ferritin's low, potentially, man, but I don't think that, I think there's something else wrong here. I don't really know the mechanism by which low ferritin can cause erectile dysfunction. Maybe there's one. I'd have to look at the literature and do some mind mapping. But I think that E235 is not a bad place to be. If your DHT is very high, that E2 might feel like 12, though. Again, this works on the other side of the spectrum. Like too much androgen and not enough estrogen is a bad state too. It's exactly what happens when people take AIs and get problems. So I don't know what you're dosing, but like it looks to me that you're dosing cream or you're taking DHT, in which case you probably want to scale that DHT down a little, man. Is what I would say. It isn't the case that DHT, because it's so prosexual, that like loads of it with not enough estrogen to support that androgen load is good. When next vid with Steve? I don't know. Steve's scaled back on content and seems to be very busy and had the whole pregnancy thing with his wife and baby and all that stuff. So I think he's busy with that. I haven't talked to Steve since I think I super chatted on one of his videos maybe a few months back, but I haven't talked to Steve in about 6 months. Yeah, him and I had a Skype call, a Zoom call about something like 6 months ago. Changed nothing noticeable in the last 3 weeks. Do I need to take more time to recognize change? Blood test is 29th of April. Okay, what is your situation? Switched to daily injections of cypionate and then libido crashed. Right. So this is a guy that switched to daily injections of cypionate. Don't know what the dose was prior. Did this for 3 weeks, still libido is crappy. It's probably not going to change, but I would need to know where you came from to determine, do you need to wait it out a little longer? Ultimately 5-6 weeks, unless you front load to get where you were or take a week off to get like closer to your steady state, you got to wait about 6 weeks, man. Either way, the change takes some time. If it's not trending in the right direction, you probably don't have to wait. It's usually your indication that things are not great. Also, new DHT gel hitting the market, farm grade apparently. You probably know the source. Well, if it's from the typical source, that'd be interesting. We'll see. I haven't heard about it. I'm not really focused on exogenous DHT all that much right now. I did a lot of experiments with it. It was totally great. I have a lot of it. I got so much of that stuff, but if I'm dialed in, otherwise don't need it. And frankly, sometimes Proviron is just easier. What do you think about HCG monotherapy for PFS? Bad idea. Bad idea. Nope. You can't control the androgen estrogen ratio that way. Your body's just going to do whatever it does. If you're on the wrong dose, you're going to be highly estrogenic and not androgenic enough. Your guys' problem is that you convert too much test to estrogen and not enough to DHT. So HCG is hardly a DHT-centric modality of hormone optimization. So this would be a bad idea. I think you might have read that in the forums, and people might have positive responses initially, but you don't talk to them 6 months later. Do they stay on it? 100% of the time, no, they didn't. What you want is androgens and you want testosterone and you want HCG. You're probably going to have to control estrogen or find a dose that lands your estrogen in a sex-friendly zone, 30 or so, 25 or so picograms per milliliter. If at that point you have low DHT still, your 5-AR enzymes are impaired, you need to take DHT itself to increase those or improve the function of them. And there's a slight chance that you need high levels of everything. Not everyone's the same with PFS. You might need bolus injections of cypionate or anethate once a week, and then things start coming back. Okay, so this guy decreased his dose from 115 to 85, and did daily. So now you don't really know the variable that reduced your libido. Was it the decrease in your dose from 115 to 85? Or was it now that you're doing daily injections? I would argue it's a little bit of both, but mostly that you're doing daily injections. So again, with daily injections, people that are proponents of it say, well, you reduce peaks in estradiol. That's right. You also reduce peaks in androgens. You reduce peaks in everything. Okay. If you needed a peak in androgens and estradiol to have libido, you're never going to get it with daily injections. Never. You just sit there forever. Oh, maybe it's my dopamine receptors. It's not. You would need to be taking like pharmaceutical grade dopamine agonist in high doses for a long time to desensitize the dopamine receptors. It's just unlikely to be the case. If I were you, brother, I would go back to 115. This all depends on where your bloods go. I can't see your blood, so I don't really know where you're at, but I would go back to 115 and I'd be dosing, was it 55 milligrams, 57 milligrams twice a week. If your energy tolerates that, I bet the sexual function will come back. If your energy doesn't tolerate that, then you move to 65 milligrams twice a week, 70 milligrams twice a week, 80 milligrams every fourth day. Something like that, brother. So would you recommend starting with 100 milligrams test sip a week along with 250 IU a week with the HCG? I think that's reasonable. You'll be on the low end of testicular function with that HCG dose, but you might tolerate it just fine. And with that, you're unlikely to over-aromatize in some substantial way, and you probably get enough peaks to feel really good on sexual function. Yeah. And then once you do that, get your bloods both at peak and trough. If I were you, get them at day 3.5 and at day 7 before you re-inject. That would be your peak and trough. Day 3.5 is peak on cypionate for the most part. And then analyze where you are, where you're going in terms of hormones within that effect duration window. The estrogens start out at 22 and then it ends up at 45. Well, that's reasonable as long as the androgens are high. I think that will be fine. Yeah. The best cypionate protocols that I've seen work are 70 milligrams every third or fourth day with very little HCG, 60 to 100 IU a day. That works really great for people. The anabolic docs kind of common famous protocol of 100 to 120 every fifth day. A little bit of HCG again to make sure you don't over-aromatize and throw off your hormone ratios. You can make every other day work, but you got to be dosing pretty high amounts so that you're bolusing still, like 60 every other day. It's 210 a week. That's the kind of stuff that barely works but can work for some people. And then 100 every 3.5 days or 150 every 5 days, or for people that metabolize test fast, 150 every 3.5 days. And therein you pretty much get everything. Might have to deal with some acne, potentially some blood pressure issues if your body is in a crappy place, which you should always work to fix so that doesn't happen. But those are honestly the best doses. Otherwise, the fail-safe protocol, you're going all the way down to 98 milligrams a week. There's the only case in which daily injections actually make sense because the estrogen is going to be low. So you'll just end up in the right hormone ratio, whereas you try to scale that up 130, 140, 150, 160, 210. Daily injections ratios don't work. You're very lukewarm. I currently run 250 IU HCG 3 times a week. So your total is 750 IU. Okay, that's not bad. I'm curious to know how much you think that HCG contributes to total testosterone level on top of my testosterone dose or enanthate dose. 250 3 times a week, 750 IU total. That is probably has you at 80% testicular function, 90%, roughly. 93%. And in that case, you've got a pretty good degree of intratesticular testosterone. In terms of nanograms per deciliter, you might be looking at, on the low end 150, on the high end 400. Thanks. I'll wait until after the next blood test. I'll have more clear current status. Test and free test was over the chart last time. That's why I reduced. Oh, okay. LH and FSH were 0. They're always going to be 0 on TRT. Or near 0. So, yeah. How did you feel, though? Did you feel good up there at 115? Up there. But doing less frequent injections, if you did have kept it there, but maybe not. Rohits, I did 200 milligrams test. 100 milligrams Primo 500 IU HCG weekly, and 12.5 per VAR every day. Should have stopped HCG for a while. E2 was 67. I don't know, because I don't know what your symptoms are, man. You gotta explain what was wrong. What was wrong with that protocol, man? I can't look at a protocol and know zero about how it's affecting you and say, yeah, I should change this or that. Daily cypionate, 20 milligrams test. Okay, so you're doing 140 a week then? Was 1,300. E2 was 54. You're not hyper responding, but I wouldn't be at 1,500 at daily dosing of 20 milligrams. Okay, E2 is 54, 1,300, total test 1,300. That's not terrible. You're right on that cusp there where like the test should probably be like 1,500 for 54 E2. Was lean doing cardio training. EQ was poor. Yeah, this is exactly why. Is that a situation where bolus 2 times a week would be worth a shot? Yeah, in your case, I yes. And if you're going to do twice a week, I'd go with like 70 milligrams twice a week. Your total test is probably only going to go to like 800, 700 or something, but E2 will be 35 or 30, and I bet erection quality will be better, libido will be better, and if you're anabolic enough and strong enough, you're dialed in at that point. All you really need to do, now I don't know your situation, but sometimes all people need to do in this case is increase the androgen amount or do it less frequently so that your peak is enough to sustain what is ultimately over range or super physiologic estradiol. Yeah, again, above 60, 65 is where no matter how much androgen you have, you're going to have erectile dysfunction or some sort of sexual function problem because estrogen's just too high. People forget that, like, the reason estrogen itself or in the wrong ratio with tests can be anti-erectile and mess with sexual function is that it inhibits like the pathway from the neurotransmitter firing, which binds in the penis, which fosters nitric oxide. Also creates penile level noradrenaline, which is profoundly anti-erectile. In fact, if you take Trimix, which is a penile vasodilator, set of vasodilators that you inject into your penis to induce an erection, if you have serious ED, you know what they give you as the antidote to priapism, an erection that lasts more than 3.5, 4 hours that potentially could damage your penis? They give you basically noradrenaline, like something that will act in a noradrenergic fashion at penile tissue to reduce the erection. So noradrenaline is not your friend regarding erections, and estrogen tends to increase that. If I were you, yeah, I mean, try to get the androgens up if you can with more of a bolus. Don't do daily injections. Yeah, if you want to do it as frequent as possible, try every other day, but do it intramuscularly, man. Don't do it sub-Q. You are going to just stay fucked if you do that. Do it intramuscularly. And if that fails you, do less frequent injections. Yeah. You're all of you people who are still like on the train of daily injections for whatever reason, you're a YouTube guru or whatever. And by the way, if the reason is you feel good, I understand. If you do infrequent injections of larger amounts where estrogen doesn't land substantially super physiologic, I bet you're going to get your libido and erections back. I bet you'll get them back. Dude, I've seen some really weird shit, like nothing worked for TRT, not even weekly injections. And then we had a guy do, was it 350, 375 once every 2 weeks? You know how ridiculous that sounds? Because that is antithetical to everything we think we know, or what the gospel is on TRT. Oh, that's a prehistoric protocol. We've evolved from that point. You should never do that. Some people never dial in on TRT because they're listening to, we should never do some of the traditional ways, which were developed probably by endocrinologists. who are smart people when it comes to hormones, they go on 400 milligrams every 2 weeks and their fucking libido and erections are insane. You just don't know, man. You just don't know what could be good for you. And you've got to try everything, bro. Everything. Ultimately, most people can dial in at any dose, but it just hormone ratios have to be right. Estrogen has to be right. It's got to be the right frequency. You know, I can dial in at 100 milligrams a week. I don't feel great, but I can dial in at 100 milligrams cypionate. I can dial in at 140. I can dial in at 200. Can't quite dial in at 500 though. My erections were fine, but Cialis was useful, and I had to take Aromasin to even have erections at very high test. Brothers, any other questions? Brothers, it's like 70 something today. Be relatively nice outside, but since we haven't reached spring yet, even though we're late April, I mean, like, come on. It's going to be 40 something tomorrow. 70 today, 40 something tomorrow, and then another crappy 50-degree day on Monday, and then back to 60s and back to spring soon enough. Like, I just can't wait until all the lakes are open. Like, you know, I have this lake in it's called Lake Arthur. It's like north of Pittsburgh, where you go to the lake. There's a big long grass area where people set up chairs, and it's almost like a beach setup. And then on the other side of that same lake, there's a beach. There's actually sand that they like made it. They made a sand beach. I can't wait for all that stuff to open up, and it opens up after Labor Day. Or is it Memorial Day? Yeah, Memorial Day. Once Memorial Day comes, game on for summer stuff. Yep. I'm going to be going to the shore, Jersey Shore, in June. Going up to Lake Erie, because I live 2 hours from Lake Erie. Yeah, Lake Erie is like right up north for me, so it's very cool to have that. Going to Lake Arthur, and I just can't wait for it to be consistently nice, man. Consistently nice. Then we know we have about 6 months of good weather, which is awesome. And then when it becomes winter again, it's going to suck. But Jill and I are going to go to Florida in January. Somewhere south, like Miami Beach is just a good, easy option where it's pretty much warm in January. It's going to be 70s. And there are some places just south of that are absolutely summery in January. Just to not go crazy. This winter was a very hard winter for me. People say that, like, you know, if you lived in colder climates your whole life, you get used to it. And I think it's nonsense. Yeah, I'm used to it. It sucks more. It doesn't suck less. It sucks more because for my whole 42 years, with the exception of 3.5 years in the Army and a year and some change in Iraq, I've been in the Northeast. I'm not used to it. It sucks. It sucks, dude. It's fucking cold. You're welcome, brother. It's cold. The winters are brutal. You can make it work. Me and Jill went out a good bit, but not as much as we should have. We really should have been going out more. You can take little trips to different cities and get a hotel room for 2 nights, and it makes you feel like you have novelty and you're doing a little mini vacation kind of thing. You know, we had gone home for my sister having a baby, and we had gone home for something else, and we stayed back where I lived prior to Pittsburgh, which is the Lehigh Valley, and that was fun, and it was winter. Gotta do things. Gotta travel. I'm a huge fan of not doing the deferred life, the deferred retirement plan. Like, why retire at 65 before which you live a shitty life and don't have fun? You know, you should try to build your life where you can kind of live a very great life all the way through. You're retiring the whole time while still working. Anyway, I got on a tangent there. Anyway, it seems like there's no more questions, boys, so I guess I'll kill the stream. I'll be doing much more content this week. So Monday, Wednesday, Friday, likely at least every other day split. Many more topics to break down. It's endless, so look forward to all that. Otherwise, as I said, we're at 13. We're at 13 booked on this so far. There's 12 left. We have 12 booked and 13 left, something like that. So these are booking pretty quick. It took me 2 weeks to get to 12 booked or 13 booked. So another 2 weeks, this will be gone. Everything's 50% off right now. a small intake window for coaching, after which I'm going to close coaching down. Coaching will be closed down once we fill these, and it's probably going to fill in about 2 weeks, maybe less. April's typically a very great month for us, so they might close sooner. And the only thing that'll be available once these close are just consults. You can get on the phone with me, so if that's all you need, totally cool. But coaching goes away after this major discount. Slots are filled. All right, brothers, kick ass, rock on. Talk to you this week. Peace.